Hello and welcome back to Bitesize Boxing. So I'm going to keep this brief because there's not really massive amounts to talk about. I'm going to briefly be touching on Dillian Whyte in this video, but as of sort of a spectrum of videos to cover, there hasn't been a lot to talk about as of recent because we're kind of in one of those lull states where there's not really a lot going on. We had a big card last month with Usyk Dubois 2, and now it's sort of a quietness in the action up until next week, where we have Moses Itauma versus Dillian Whyte, which is a pay-per-view show. I will not be paying pay-per-view for that, but it has got a decent card, so we'll be covering that card next week, and we will of course be covering the main event in great detail as well. But there's one thing I wanted to talk about today, and that is Dillian Whyte in particular, and Dillian Whyte and the shape of Dillian Whyte. So Dillian Whyte has been pictured recently training, and he looks in fantastic shape. He really does, especially for Dillian Whyte standards. Now, Dillian Whyte is somebody who, as of recent, has been weighing in and around the normal sort of weight we are used to seeing him, you know, the high sort of 240s to low 250s, mid 250s. That's a normal weight for Dillian Whyte. But there's one thing weighing a certain weight, and there's one thing having good body composition. I can attest to this. I've lost a lot of weight recently, and the weight I used to be 10 years ago nearly was the same as what I am now, but body comp, completely different ball game. So just because you weigh a certain weight, that doesn't mean that every time you weigh that weight, you're going to look exactly the same on the scales. And Dillian Whyte, you can tell, has either... Some people will speculate, you know, failed drugs test, and they'll raise an eyebrow there, and they'll go, well, that's why he doesn't look as good. But I'm fair to... I'll be fair to Dillian Whyte and say that I think it's probably because he looks like someone to me who hasn't really been training, and then he's just lost the weight quickly and then, you know, thrown himself into a training camp kind of thing. Whereas this fight with Itauma, he's had a lot of notice. He's obviously had a couple of warm-up fights. So you would assume he's going to have the actual preparation to be able to get himself into the kind of shape that you would expect. So just aesthetically, Dillian Whyte, from what you can see, again, pictures and videos can be deceiving. There's a video of him working out in a heavy bag where he looks a lot more trim than what we've seen him. He does look... You can kind of see almost, because he's wearing like an Under Armour shirt and kind of trousers, that he looks almost toned underneath it. You can see he's definitely muscular, and he looks a lot more thick set than how he looked previously, whereas before he looked a lot more flabby. So he definitely does look in good shape. It was sort of raised a couple of weeks ago when he appeared on an interview with IFL and Coogan, that you could see there that in the face he looked a lot slimmer. And again, it's a body recomp thing. He might be weighing, say, 250, and he's normally weighed 250 before, for example. But you can still see in the composition of his body and in his face and in his features, he's clearly slimmer, he's clearly trimmer, and he's clearly in better shape. So it's interesting because I think... I don't give him a great shot against Itauma, just sort of going into this, but it gives Dillian Whyte a better shot, because going into this fight, it's one of those that if you'd asked me 3 months ago, and I might have even spoken about this briefly before, I would have said this fight was a foregone conclusion. And I would have said, if I had to put money on it, I'm genuinely going 90-10, maybe 95-5, that kind of swing. That's how confident I was that Itauma was going to get it done. Not because Itauma has proven himself at any great level yet, or that, you know, there's no chinks in Itauma's armoury or anything like that, and there's nothing that appears to be wrong with him. You know, thing is with Itauma, we still haven't seen the chin tested. There's the intangibles that we don't know about with Itauma. What happens when you take him a few rounds? All these kind of things. But Whyte has looked so bad as of recent that I had no reason to be worried about Moses Itauma going into that fight, because his chin's look completely gone. From a cardiovascular point of view, he's blowing out his arse after a couple of rounds. So all these kind of things, I was thinking, well, there's no point. It's not going to be competitive, so, you know, it doesn't really matter what Whyte does. But the shape that Whyte's got himself in does give him a... I'm not going to say good shot, but it gives him the best chance that he can have going into this fight, which does, for me, make it more interesting. A fully motivated, a fully fit, and a as in shape as can be Dillian Whyte has the potential to be able to give Itauma some problems, let's be frank. Particularly if he adopts a certain style, which I will talk about in my preview. But what do you think? Because I'd be interested to know, because this is something that I didn't anticipate, to be honest. I thought we'd very much seen the best of Dillian Whyte in terms of a shape point of view. I thought he was going to come in how he's been looking as of recent. I thought Whyte was going to be coming in, you know, similar to how he has been against the likes of Tete and Hammer. And I'll be honest, I thought, again, it was going to be a foregone conclusion. But from what we've seen in this recent footage, he does look in good shape. And as I say, it gives him a better shot. What do you think? I'd be interested to know. You let me know. Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.